Academia, my thoughts 1 year later. So in this video, I'm going to respond to two questions. One, how do you feel about leaving academia? And two, do you miss it? So spoiler alert to the second question. No, I do not miss it. But I'm going to get into it. So I'm Dr. Catherine Sophia Bell. I am a Black woman who did all the things that Black women are told that we are supposed to do. So I got all of the degrees, all of the certifications. I had the marriage, the children. I had it all, and I felt trapped by all of it. So I decided to liberate myself, and now I'm living life on my own terms. I'm focusing on the things that I love to do, like reading, writing, speaking, and coaching, as well as embracing my sensuality and sexuality with lovers and in Black kink spaces. And on this channel, I really am just sharing my core pillars of transformation in an effort to motivate and encourage you on your own liberation journey while also building beloved community. So let's get into this video. So I saw a video called I Left Academia, My Honest Thoughts 2 years Later by a woman named Dr. Gertrude Nontera. Now, Gertrude is someone who's a STEM PhD. She was working at a community college. She had a postdoctoral fellowship, and she decided to leave the academy. She did not get a tenure track job. She decided to leave academia. And she talks about how the assumption is that people who leave because they are not successful at it. And she points out that there are actually people who are very successful at it who still choose to leave. And I wanted to put my 2 cents in here because, again, there are some differences between me and Gertrude. Like Gertrude, again, has a PhD in STEM. My PhD is in the humanities and philosophy. But I'm someone who is very successful in the academy, right? And so I had 2 tenure track jobs. My first one was at Vanderbilt University in African American and Diaspora Studies with a courtesy appointment in philosophy. And then my second one was at Penn State University, where my tenure home was in philosophy. And I later had a affiliate faculty status with African American Studies as well as women's gender and sexuality studies. So I'm someone who was very prolific in terms of my publication record. I published a few books. So I published Hannah Arendt and the Negro Question, which is right there. I actually co-edited this book, which is Convergences, Black Feminism and Continental Philosophy. And then my most recent book is Beauvoir and Belle, A Black Feminist Critique of the Second Sex, right? So I had an edited collection. I had 2 single authored books. I special edited several journals and things like that. I actually co-founded the journal, Critical Philosophy of Race, before I even got tenure. So I did all the things in terms of being prolific with my publication record. I enjoyed reading, I enjoyed writing, I enjoyed publishing. I enjoyed giving talks and being in that world. And then I also did get tenure. So I earned tenure and promotion, I think in like 2014, 2015. I had a lot of administrative experience in the academy when I was there, from interim head of departments. I never wanted to be the long-term head of a department, but I did step in as interim head twice in African American Studies. I was DGS in philosophy. I was placement officer in philosophy. I was the director of a research center. So I did all the things. I was very successful as an academic, and I still decided to walk away from it because it no longer felt aligned for me, right? And so I want to point out that I agree with Gertrude, right? Like people who walk away, sometimes people do walk away because they can't get the tenure track job, or because they can't get tenure, or because they don't want to get stuck at certain types of institutions. But that was not my story. I was always at resource-rich institutions. I always had the salaries that I asked for. I always had research funds and research budgets. I always had funds to do initiatives. So I was not in a position where I was not well compensated for the work that I did, or didn't have the resources to do the kind of initiatives that I wanted to do. But I got to a place where I knew that it was no longer aligned for me. Right. And so in my last video, the first video that I did, I talked about how leaving the academy was similar to leaving my marriage. Like at a certain point, I knew I was no longer aligned and I needed to leave. I knew I wanted to leave the institution of marriage and the institution of higher education around the same time. But I decided to exit the marriage first and then kind of regroup, reassess, and then work out my exit strategy for leaving academia. Right. So let's get to these questions. So one of the questions is, how do you feel about leaving academia? And I have to say, I really feel good about it. As I often say, I have 0 regrets about leaving my marriage or about leaving the academy. I feel lighter. I feel freer. I feel more liberated. I feel like I'm able to show up in a more honest and authentic way without the kind of constraints of what was starting to feel like institutional bondage for me within academia. And I'm going to do another video on what I describe it as institutional bondage within the academy. I'm not going to get into that now. I really just want to focus on how I feel about it 1 year later and whether or not I miss it, right? So I officially resigned / retired from my tenured associate professor of philosophy position effective June 30th, 2023. So it's been a little bit over a year for me now. And again, I have zero regrets about that. In the last year, I have been able to really kind of decompress from all the things that were building up for me when I was still in the academy, and the reason, part of the reasons why I decided to walk away from it. I've been able to experience being a lady of leisure for a while, but I didn't have a whole lot of responsibilities. I could just focus on resting and again, recovering and focusing on, what do I really want to do? Who do I really want to be in the world, and those kinds of things. So it feels really good to make a decision based on what feels like. Audre Lorde talks about how oftentimes in the Western philosophical tradition or with Western epistemologies, we're always focusing on the I think, right? Or the Cartesian I think, therefore I am. So she has this great line where she says, they say I think, therefore I am, but our Black mothers whisper to us in our dreams, I feel, therefore I can be free, right? And so she talks about the importance of just embracing that I feel, or it just feels good, or it just feels right. So for me, walking away from my marriage just felt right. For me, walking away from the academy just felt right. Like I did what felt right for me at the time. I knew intuitively, I knew 10 years ago, 2013, that I was going to eventually leave the academy, but it was 2023, 2024 when I decided to execute my exit strategy, because intuitively I knew it was time. The ancestors said, get out and get out now. And I know how to trust and follow my ancestors, right? So I feel really good about that decision 1 year later. And then the other question that I did want to respond to is, do I miss it? And again, the answer to that is no, 100% no. And I want to get into why I don't miss it, right? Because I think part of the issue is when we miss something, it's because either, there can be aspects of it that were good, and it's just like, okay, well, I didn't like this, but I do like that. And so I missed the thing that I like. And that was part of my decision-making process as well, right? So I took an inventory of what do I really enjoy about being a professor and being in the academy, and what do I not enjoy about being a professor and being in the academy, right? Like, what are the emotional costs? What are the emotional benefits? What are the energetic costs? What are the energetic benefits? And so for me, as I took inventory of the things that I really enjoyed, and I literally did do lists of this is what I like about this is what I don't like, or what's not working for me. And in terms of the things that I really liked about being a professor, I enjoyed and still enjoy reading. I enjoyed and still enjoy writing. I enjoyed and still enjoy speaking, right? But all of the other things were starting to take time away from the things that I actually enjoyed. So the teaching was taking away from the time that I had to do the things that I enjoyed, the constant meetings, the constant emails, the constant committees, the constant administrative things, right? Like all of those things started to pile up, and they began to outweigh the things that I actually enjoyed doing. So when I took inventory and assessed what do I really like about being a professor, I realized reading, writing, and speaking are things that I can do outside of the academy. I don't have to be a professor to do those things. And in fact, if I put down the professor duties, I have more time to align my energy, my time, my actions with the things that I actually enjoy doing, right? So one of the reasons that I don't miss the academy is because I'm actually focusing on the things that I love doing, right? Like I can focus my time and attention on reading, on writing, on speaking, on coaching, on building out La Belle Vie Academy and creating community there. And so I think this is also a reminder that the academy is not the only intellectual space that exists. And in fact, a lot of times academic intellectual space can be very constraining. We joke sometimes about how we're considered to be in disciplines because disciplines discipline you, right? Like the discipline of the philosophy or the discipline of literature or whatever your discipline may be that you trained in. And so I'm able to engage in and build intellectual community in ways that are not disciplined the way they are within the academic structure, right? So I'm able to really embrace more fully and more effectively and with less constraint and less, I don't know what else I would say, like constraint or restrictions that exist within academic structures, right? And I love this because I think a lot of times there are assumptions, and I talked about this in the last video, there are assumptions that you're going to be cut off from your intellectual community when you leave the academy. And I want to reiterate the point that people are in relationship with you, right? Like, people in my life are in relationship with me. They're not in relationship with the institution where I work, right? And so me leaving the academy, or me leaving a particular university or college, did not mean that I became cut off from my intellectual community, right? And so because I'm building, again, my own beloved community, whether it's through this YouTube channel or through La Belle Vie Academy, I'm still very much connected to people that I love, people who I can engage with intellectually. I still have a lot of intellectual stimulation, right? And so some of the ways that I maintain that community through La Belle Vie Academy is through La Belle Vie Writers, for example. And so we are meeting, we meet for 2 hours in the morning and 2 hours in the afternoon. Although everybody doesn't stay the whole 2 hours, we kind of pop in and pop out as needed. But I'm working on my next book project in that group, right? So my next book is on Audre Lorde. I'm excited to jump into that. And so I've been working on this week, for example, just tweaking the structure of the chapters for that book. And it's wonderful to be able to come in and meet with my beloved community of La Belle Vie Writers, where we're all working on, you know, our different projects. We do our writing. We have an optional check-in where we can talk about, you know, where we are in the process or what's going on with us. And that's just such a beautiful, beloved community that I love being a part of. And I'm able to really focus my energy and efforts and intention and attention, not only on my own writing, but encouraging other writers in their own process and their own journeys as they're navigating being in the academy and potentially leaving the academy as well, right? And so I don't miss the academy because I have my own academy and I have my own beloved community, right? And so my connection to, again, intellectual stimulation and beloved community was not only tied to my academic affiliation. So I love that and I appreciate that. Another way that I'm able to do that is, again, through coaching, right? So a lot of my coaching clients are still people who are academics, and for a lot of the clients that I work with, I'm helping them navigate how to get through that tenure and promotion process. So going from a graduate student to assistant professor, from assistant to associate, and from associate to full. And I resigned right before going up for promotion to full professor. So I knew that I was going to be leaving, and I decided not to submit my dossier for going up for full professor. So I would have gotten full professor because I had my second book out, which is the Beauvoir and Belle book with a top press, right? It's with Oxford University Press. So I was going to have a successful promotion to full professor, but I knew that I did not want to stay in the academy. And I knew that as a Black woman, it was more than likely going to be Black women who would be called on to write tenure letters for me. And I didn't want for them to have to do the labor that would have been required for my tenure file to go forward, knowing that I was going to walk away from it. And I remember when I told one of my mentors within the institution that I was leaving, and she said, well, are you going to leave before going up for full? And it was just like, I don't want this anymore. That doesn't really mean anything to me anymore. And she said, well, there's still the honorific of it. And I thought, I think that's a valid point. But once I was clear about what I wanted and what I didn't want anymore, like that honorific of the promotion, like the status or the title, didn't mean anything to me anymore. And once I realized this was something that was no longer aligned for me. So that was actually not a difficult decision for me to make, because I knew I wanted something different, and I wanted to be able to kind of, again, just live more openly and authentically and be a writer in the world without that having to be tied to me being a professor or being at a particular institution. So again, some of the questions I asked, what do I love about the job? What do I hate about the job? It turned out the things that I disliked about the job or even hated strongly outweighed anything that I loved about it. And the things that I loved about it were things that I didn't have to be a professor to do. In terms of what was energizing, what was energy depleting, a lot of the job became very energy depleting for me. So even going to campus was exhausting for me. Having to hop on a Zoom was exhausting for me. Department meetings were exhausting. Any kind of meeting that I had to do, responding to email, every other aspect of the job outside of the reading and the writing and the speaking became so burdensome that I didn't want to do it anymore. And I knew it was time to go. So there's nothing about that part of it that I miss. And again, anything that I would miss, I've been able to replicate outside of that structure. Now, again, I still do give academic talks. I've given keynotes. I will continue to talk about my work on Hannah Arendt. I will continue to talk about my work on Simone de Beauvoir, my work on Audre Lorde, and other kinds of things that I write about, right? So I am still very much a public speaker. I do and will still speak with academic institutions or academic societies, but I can do that, again, on my own terms without having to be tied to the institutional bondage of that structure. So I encourage you to do your own inventory, right? Like if you're an academic, let me know in the comments, like, are you an academic? Are you thinking about leaving? And what are some of the things that you really love about being an academic? And what are the things that you hate or dislike or don't like? What are the things that feel like they're weighing you down? Are there things that really excite you and energize you? And what are those things? And are there things that are just energy depleting, that are just weighing you down? Also think about like the emotional costs of the job. Think about the financial costs and the financial benefits. Like a lot of people, I think, do leave legitimately because they're underpaid or not compensated well. Again, that wasn't my story. I was actually very well compensated as a professor, so I didn't walk away because I didn't feel like I was, I mean, of course, Black women can always be paid more, but I wasn't someone who felt like I was underpaid as an academic. So the financial benefits to being a professor were actually great for me, but not good enough for me to stay in it. And I decided to bet on myself, knowing that I could, like, knowing my own value and knowing that I did not necessarily have to rely on the quote unquote good job with benefits. And I'll do another video on that as well, because there is a mindset shift that goes with going from having a consistent paycheck from somebody else to doing something different. But I did a lot of work around that before walking away. So I will eventually do a video on that as well. So that's where I am. So I've shared with you how I feel about walking away 1 year later. I feel great about it. I feel liberated. I have zero regrets. I made good life choices, and I was able to take all the things I loved about it and continue to do that while releasing all the things that I don't like about it, and not having to do those things anymore. So please do holler at me in the comments. Remember to follow or subscribe. Remember to like and comment and share this video. This is my second video that I'm sharing. I really was excited about posting my first video last week. I appreciate everybody who's watched that video, who's liked, who's commented, who's subscribed. And so I want to encourage you, if you're on this journey having to do with being an academic and thinking about your exit strategies, definitely continue to come back to watch those the videos that I post on that. Again, I have several pillars in my own liberation journey. So one of those pillars will focus on being academic and exit strategies. One will focus on writing, because again, I do have Belle Vie Writers and I'm still a writer. I do have a pillar that will focus on happily unmarried and my delightfully divorced journey. And I will also have a pillar focusing on erotic empowerment. But these first few weeks, especially as we're in August, we're about to get to like back to school time. The semester is going to be starting back up usually around mid-August or the 3rd or 4th week in August. And so I think people are starting to think about, you know, do I really still want to do this academic thing, or knowing I don't still want to do this academic thing, but I need to figure out what my exit strategy is. And that's what I hope people figure out who are academics who want to exit, right? Like, what are some pragmatic planning things that you can put into place to map out your exit, as well as just that proverbial permission slip to leave, because I think it can be hard, again, especially for a Black woman who is tenured, who is well compensated, who has like all the things from the outside that look good, but again, they're weighing you down and you're not actually enjoying them. Like, it doesn't make sense to have success on somebody else's terms when you're not actually enjoying your life. And I mean, like, your life as well as your work life, right? So I'm here to help people plot their exit strategies, especially Black women and women of color who, again, just want that pragmatic planning and that proverbial permission slip. Come on in, the water's fine. It feels so good on the other side of that decision. Again, it feels light, it feels free, it feels right, it feels good, as Audre Lorde says. Okay, so again, thank you for hanging out with me. Thank you for listening. My next video is going to be on the liberation of leaving the academy. So I'm going to talk a little bit about this perceived freedom that you have as an academic and as a professor, and juxtapose that with the actual liberation that you experience, or that I experience in particular, by leaving academia. So thanks for joining me. I'll see you next time. Bye.